Yo, it's Friday.
Oh, I thought you said y'all. I've been saying y'all.
I don't even know if I said y'all or yo. But
I've been doing it in an awkward way. I don't really say y'all in my daily lives, but I
don't
always
say your chin on
I
the
stand
mic
there
when you're talking.
I'm testing my length, my distance.
Sure, that comes over great to the listeners.
But I've been doing that with my kids lately because there's so many of them. I'll just be like, y'all need to hush. I'm gonna walk out, and then I walk out of the house. Y'all need to quit fighting. And I find it funny because I never say y'all to anybody, but I guess y'all.
Once you have a horde of children, you have to say y'all.
The question is, how much sweet tea do you drink?
Yeah. No, I do have to cut tea. Anyway, so I just got back.
Start saying y'all. You have to drink way more sweet tea.
My kids all pick up like this southern accent that I don't know where they get it from, but when they start being silly, they'll just start talking. I don't know. And like it comes out of nowhere. Where are you listening to this? Where is this coming from?
My kids.
Avery's the best. Like he'll just be talking with a southern drawl. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
See, I'm just confused with Avery because I half the time don't understand anything he's saying anyway. I do. It's in a subject that I don't even understand.
I have 2 speech impediment children in my house, so I can understand quite a bit.
Well, it's not the speech impediment. It's just the fact that he's so off the wall that I don't even know where he's coming from.
It's bad that some speech impediments. I know he needs to get it fixed just so he can grow up to be a good adult, but I don't want it to go away because it's cute.
There's definitely words that have done. To this day, I have a 15-year-old now, and we still say fries in our house. So it's just
weird.
You don't
if you say
get rid of
biscotti,
things.
that's still acceptable. In fact, there's a restaurant now called Biscotti's.
My 8-year-old still says AVT instead of ATV, but we're also gonna have him check for dyslexia. So that might be why.
Yeah.
Not sure.
That can be strange.
Good to see you guys. This is the podcast, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
I just got back from vacation, technically, a small vacation.
All 3 of us got back
3 days
in from 3 vacations in a row.
3
you guys
weeks
had much better
in a very consecutive manner. We've all decided, I think, we all know that we have kids that are going back to school, and it was like all of a sudden, we need to get a vacation in.
Unfortunately, you guys actually got vacations. You went somewhere. I was still in Missouri in a small hotel with 5 kids.
I didn't stop you from going somewhere else.
It's called a staycation, Jason.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't stop me. My bank account did.
The funny thing is,
that's okay.
Dad hadn't gone on a vacation since Mom passed, so he'd been talking about doing it forever. All of a sudden, I said, Dad, we just booked a trip to Florida, and I booked a ticket for you. And then John calls me, you booked Dad a ticket? I'm going to take him on vacation the week before. So Dad got 2 straight. Like he got home for 2 days, washed his clothes, and then jumped back on a plane and went to Florida.
I was going to make him go with me, but I didn't really.
He'd have told you no.
I didn't need it. I didn't need another body in the hotel. There's plenty in the hotel room.
But now that we're all nice and relaxed and back for some...
what?
Yeah.
I want to point that out. It was a vacation. Was it relaxing? Does anybody feel like they are better off? See, I've seen all these other like TikToks and all this of these a dad on vacation versus on a family vacation. And it is absolutely the truth. Dad ends up coming back going, oh my God, I just spent a week harder work than when I was actually
The one benefit is I was in an accident while you were gone. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Normally people don't consider that a
wrecked my truck. Not bad, but I wrecked my truck, so I couldn't bring my camper. It was supposed to be a camping trip this week. You knew that.
Yeah, I did.
You were there. It was I was supposed to be a camping trip. The only benefit to this trip is we didn't camp because we do camp. I set up the camper and I basically cook the entire time in the heat outside. And
I
didn't
really
do
enjoy
that
camping, but it becomes a lot of work. Shaylin has a great vacation, but
so hard.
And then with all this heat,
I think my kids do. I will say my wife does end up working pretty hard on
nice save, John.
Thanks
for getting everybody else in trouble.
Camping trips.
She doesn't listen. She doesn't listen to anything I make, so it really doesn't matter. So I can say what I want. Anyway, camping is fun. Vacations are tiring.
When you have kids, I think are more work. You have to plan. I was told you have to do 2 vacations. One is a family vacation, so the kids enjoy experience and you're doing a family thing, and then just give your kids to some random stranger and your wife and you go out on a vacation.
Right. But that doesn't work with my wife most of the time because she's always like, oh, I just want to experience the world with our kids.
Yeah.
And I want to take the kids
I learned
until
that lesson.
they do.
I'm gonna tell you, I know we're going over time here, but I want to point this out. Every vacation I've ever had with my wife, including the ones that we went to the same same places on this particular trip that were like, we're going to go there because I want my kids to see it. And when we went there originally, it was always the whole time, boy, I can't wait for the kids to see this. This is going to be great. They're going to enjoy this, blah, blah, blah. There was not a single one of those things that we saw that we were like, that they cared about. I mean, they did, but they didn't. In the end, I told my wife, I said, here's the deal. I never, ever want to hear you say, I want my kids to experience this, because the fact is they just didn't care.
Yeah. Well, none of it's fun for me. I just want to go home and take a nap. So moving on.
So send your wife out on a vacation with the kids, and then that's your vacation.
You go. I've been there already. That's the fun
God.
part. She gets mad because I've been there already, and then she was like, "Oh, no." All right. So what are we here to talk about, guys?
I thought vacations. Wasn't this a vacation episode?
No, it ends up we are supposed to be talking about acoustic
Guys,
instruments.
can I first say I've really enjoyed the podcast. We've had some great guests on here. Every one of them, it's still new enough that I listen back. When you first, anybody at home that does some sort of creation thing, like if you're making an album in a studio, you get so burned out on those songs, you don't want to listen to the album. Once it's finally released, you listen once and go, all right, I'm done. Same with the TV show. We watched like the first season, and then after that, it's like, was there a new episode?
There's tons you guys haven't even seen.
I haven't seen half the episodes because you have to edit them. And then podcast is still new enough. I'm enjoying every episode. I'm listening to them on the weekend. So our big viewer count.
You know
is
what that tells
mostly
me,
us.
John? He doesn't pay attention during the podcast.
No, you want to know?
You sit there and talk.
I also go back, and I've enjoyed going back and listening to these podcasts, but I skip everything that you two say and move on to the
I sit
really
there with
important
a
stuff.
deciphering tool that I got out of one of the cereal boxes and try to figure out what point John was trying to make. I start with the first letter of each word, thinking that maybe it's a secret message.
He's got some sort of code
Rambling, incoherent.
in the middle of his rambling.
So we're talking about
speech.
today. We decided we're going to talk about. We've said in the past this is the golden era of guitar building. We want to know, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's just some really good guitars every now and then, or is it that the consistency and the bar level has been raised so high?
Is that what we're doing?
I think that's what we're doing.
No, that wasn't what we decided to do. But
Okay, what was it?
we were supposed to do. Are they consistent?
What did I just say?
That's not the goal.
That is exactly what I just
No,
said.
it
But he
isn't.
brought up your problem.
I said in the past we have brought
This is
up
gonna be in
that
the
this is
editing. I
golden
can't wait.
era
This is gonna
of
be
guitar
great.
building.
Not.
This
Does
is
that
definitely
mean
there.
that you get one good guitar, or is it consistently? I just said.
I hope you guys are enjoying this.
We're gonna use the
okay,
catchphrase "golden
listeners,
era."
we're going to make it a broader podcast than originally discussed because Jeremy decided to take his own take on what we were discussing. So, is this the golden era of guitar making?
That is not what I said.
Jeremy, is this the golden era of guitar making?
I said in the past. In
John,
our
is this the
videos-
golden era? Can I get a yes from
Here comes
somebody?
Jason.
Amen.
Keep
Can I go to
going.
the bumper? Can I get a yes? Hey, Jeremy, is this the golden era of guitar making? Yes.
We have previously said this is the golden era of guitar making.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you have too many chefs
Does
in the
that
kitchen.
mean the guitars are being built more consistently?
Hey, Jeremy, to be concise, is this the golden era of guitar making? I think it might be.
Stay tuned to find out.
Take me away, 'cause I can be the link. Let somebody while letting go and I can have my way.
So we're in the golden era of guitar building.
Guitar building, right?
Some people say this might be the golden era of guitar building.
Experts have said. Anyway,
You're welcome.
to put a more fine tip on this point, no. So my original premise was. You done?
Go ahead. You won't cut it
My
off.
original point was we get this asked a lot, a question that pertains a lot to the new selling of instruments online. The consistency of these builders these days, guitars overall, even from the low end to the high end, used to be in the 80s, 60s, 70s. Inconsistency.
Can I point out something? You were born
was
in
rampant.
'83, and he's going to give us.
I know my history.
Talk about
Inconsistency was rampant.
child
Rampant.
building.
Could we please? Was rampant. You'd buy one guitar from Martin, and the next one would be completely different. Even larger
Consistency
builders,
is a
yes,
major
was bad
problem.
So my argument now is, and it seems to me, I'm not playing every guitar over there. But,
You're not talented. Yes, I know.
but let's get focused, please.
Okay.
But I see them being more consistent these days, even from entry-level instruments all the way up to the boutique builders, which I discussed the differences. But I think consistency isn't as big a issue as it was earlier, which goes back to what I was discussing earlier, where I started this sentence with, which is a very long sentence.
Yeah.
Buying online isn't that big a deal because we get some people that are extremely adverse to buying online because they have to play every instrument to pick the best one or the right one, or they have us pick the right one out. When in general, there are some that are a little bit better, but consistently they are of a certain quality and none below that. And I think that comes back to techniques, refining of the building techniques that they have, and also equipment, technology.
I think you've made a valid point somewhere in there. I got my decipher key out. No,
Well, if you wouldn't interrupt me the entire time, and I would quit laughing.
I think you are correct. The job of a luthier now is no longer, I think it used to be almost like furniture building, where it was getting the perfing, getting the binding done, getting all your braces the right way. And it was kind of like this is how you build a couch or a chair. But then they started to realize, I'm sure they did this early on, realized that each piece of wood is different. It reacts different. And now luthiers are spending, and our podcast with Richard Hoover really went to that. It's become more of the science of getting the same amount of tone and sustain and clarity out of whatever piece of wood is in front of you. So the job of a luthier shifted from the technical building and how to build a guitar and how to assemble a guitar to how to treat each wood and use the science and understanding that you developed to say, all right, this piece of wood is not responding the same way that this one did. What am I going to do different? What can I tweak here? What can I do different on the bracing or the thickness of the top or that? And I think all those builders that are, and that's even includes some of the mass-produced ones like Eastman and I'm sure there's a number of these out there. Breedlove, that are actually treating each wood using science in their building now. Breedlove does a great job of using actual readings of the pieces of wood to get a consistency out of those. But then there's also people using their ear and just saying, all right, this piece of wood's more dense. I'm going to have to treat it differently than I did that other one. Where the inconsistencies really came when everybody was just like, every wood, we want the braces this thick. It was trying to do the car manufacturing with an organic material.
I think it comes down to the competition that came post the, I don't know what you call it. I forget what Richard Hoover called it, but it was the independent builders exploding, Luthiers Guild. So we back in the day, we had a certain level or certain number of builders, Martin being the top for steel string, obviously, and the only one. No, I like it to the side and pointed this way. Anyway, thank you. But you had Martin being the number one manufacturer. There really wasn't a competition for them to refine their techniques. They had what C.F. Martin, the first, third, I don't remember. Who was the first C.F. Martin to build instruments? Anyway,
Charlie.
He had his techniques, which he was innovated.
Charlie.
It was Charlie Martin. Thank you.
Charlie Frank.
But they were innovative in their world, but that started in the turn of the century. But then you get into this world of Dana Bourgeois and Richard Hoover and all these guys that took and built on what they had and said, I want to make this better. I want to do something completely out of that. So then they start looking at
different.
Yeah, rather than copying what they're doing, they're like, what is this doing and how do I study it? And you have people that go off. So there's those different shoots. There's guys like Richard Hoover and Dana Bourgeois that look at that and say, I want to learn what this is doing and make my own version of that. But then you had guys like Preston Thompson who studied those golden era of guitars and decided to make them as good or better with new techniques there. So you have these diverging, but it's all built off of this, on the shoulders of giants type of situation. And I think it's that where we've gotten to this point where that goes back to the golden age of building guitars. Yes, I think we are. But the consistency, I think it's because we're studying how these guitars are made, how they're, and you get that, the 80, 90 years of seeing what happens when you brace a guitar this way or brace it a different way, So I think the consistency comes from the study of the past and also just narrowing in on that, refining everything you do to these instruments to find the right thing. Am I right?
I'm not gonna say you're both right and also wrong. at the same time. Here's my theory on how this all kind of came about. I think you had your original builders, the Washburns, the Martin Guitars.
Lions and Heelys.
Well, even before Lion and Healy, Martin Guitar, who's developing all this new gut strings, as well as they were doing these really crazy techniques and paying attention to every single detail and watching all this stuff. Then as it grew, a lot of those details actually disappeared when they started realizing they had to come up in bigger numbers. We go to Orville Gibson. Orville Gibson's taking these wild and crazy ideas and building those. And then when they get investors to be able to go, hey, we need to build a whole bunch of mandolins and we need to do it like this. All right, so let's redesign this. Instead of this carved back that we do out of a flat piece, let's do it.
Make it replicable.
Like it's this, and we got to make it replicable. Exactly. Martin took a lot of things that we now have come back to and took them out of their process. Slotting bridge pins, or not slotted bridge pins, but slotting bridges and not the bridge pins. They took those out of there to make a better, more quick efficiency.
Yeah.
Which has taken your Henry Ford example all the way to the max. Now, it kept going to the point where numbers just got crazy during the 60s and late 60s, early 70s when quality just went out of the window for most people because they just were trying to figure out how to get things out the door and that wasn't worried necessarily about, this. How do I keep things from coming back? Overbuild, and how do I keep it, getting out of the door quick? I'm not going to pay as much attention to that detail. I think that's where that term golden age came from. It originally had where we weren't trying to mass produce for lots of people. It was for small amounts of people building higher quality instruments. And that's what people kind of think of as that golden age of instrument building. Then we got fast forward to where the quality kind of goes crazy. And then it was really funny because that's when most people started talking about consistency and the fact that I could buy one guitar that sounds great, and the very next 5 of them I don't like at all. And I think that just came down to the fact that they weren't able to pay attention to those details. Then comes technology. And I think it's, like I said, less of, the study of, what this has done over the amount of years, but the technology just came to where I could make it more consistent and easily replicate all those things faster, quicker, and do it with all those attentions to detail because now I've freed up all that extra time. I can do it. Companies like, Eastman, Yamaha, companies like that came up with ways to get a very churnable consistency as like what am I thinking of here? Like Henry Ford's assembly line style, but do it with a lot more attention to detail because of the fact the technology, the sanding, everything was more consistent out of that. So now I can go back to voicing them individually.
Well, it goes back to the consistency and the study of it because everybody argues that every piece of wood is different no matter what, and they all act different. So you're contesting that technology has allowed us to study those pieces of wood, know exactly how they react to this bracing or how thin they'll be or how so. That argues the same thing that I was saying because the technology can be either the experience and study of the wood or actual technology, as in the resonant frequencies being mapped by computers.
Oh, it's gone way further than what, there was that innovation and the ability to kind of just go in a new world and listen to these instruments and create something that was unique and different and know on an individual basis what each instrument was going to be. I think that has happened, and that's been proven in the violin building world. These people have kind of built this over many centuries here of that. Now the steel string guitar,
that's a good point right there. I'm going to stop you. So guys like Stradivari and Guarneri, they were famous because there was a certain level of consistency to their instruments. Correct. That's why everybody thinks every Stradivari, innovation, but that's part of it. So everyone so this comes back to that a consistent builder is the most in demand builder because they can make every instrument. They study it. That's when they built a violin.
Absolutely. But see,
that's made everyone sound
the issue was that was not accessible to everybody. Mm-hmm. Right. And we can say that same thing in the guitar world. Yes, we all have heard of guitar builders and known guitar builders, mandolin builders, whatever it happens to be, that all of a sudden everybody realizes they're building a great consistent product that everybody says, because it's easy for luthiers to build a one-off that all of a sudden one of them just sounds incredible. This one was great. And then the next one
says it's easy.
Well, you know what I mean. It's much easier to hear that done. Every builder that's ever done this has said, man, I had one that just turned out. So, the skill comes from the years and years of being able to go, all right, how do I do that? And get that to become, and once it is done, then you got, let's take a mandolin builder like Steve Gilchrist, who all of a sudden has built this reputation of really great quality mandolin. Now everybody wants one. And now he's got to figure out how to get the numbers to do it while also creating that consistency. Because yes, he can ramp up and all of a sudden go, man, I was building 12 mandolins last year. This year I'm going to do 36. Well, that's doable. But to say I'm going to do 36 that all stay in that same level of quality, that same level of sound, that's a whole nother world, right? And it's taken these companies to take the technologies that they are able to develop to kind of go there.
It's hard to get a word in edgewise.
I know, isn't it
with you.
wild?
You're something. Anyway, I was going to make a point that maybe it is the consumer demand that has caused this consistency boom where in that time period that Martin and Gibson kind of went through a rough patch of just saying, hey, we just got to pump out guitars. The customer really doesn't care. They just want our guitars. And then you had a few builders, and that left a void where the Santa Cruzes and the Collings and all these boutique builders popped up into this world, and bourgeois, and all of a sudden the consumers are like, I want that tone, and that demand, obviously they started to shift and buy from these independent guys, and that made these other major manufacturers go back and say, you know what, guys, we got to retool and refigure out what we're putting out there because we've taken a hit in our reputation from just trying to pump stuff out there. The consumer wants this certain tone, this certain developed guitar, and they want it on a consistent basis. We can't be having one really good one and 3 bad ones. So maybe the consumer demand that started to go to Steve Gilchrist and started to go to Bourgeois is what made it rose all the boats in the harbors.
I think this is a chicken or the egg thing.
Yes. I have an argument that I think might be pertinent here, and it is John sucks at podcasting.
But beyond argument there.
I think you guys, the only thing I says throw a wrench in John's theory of there being a cycle of everything being good and then going bad for the sake of building enough numbers and then coming back up is I don't think those guitars were that consistent, were they? Or mandolins especially. There's lures out there that I hate to tell the owner who paid $90,000 for it are kind of dogs. Was that consistency there? I still feel like there's an element to us building upon technology and experience to build these consistent guitars, because there are some D28s out there from pre-war era that really aren't good. We've had a couple in here that don't stand up to your guitar, and there's no reason your guitar would be good other than happenstance. Were they consistent, and did they get better at different rates with age, or were they inconsistent back then? Do you think?
I think you got an argument that's there. I think it's more consistent now. I think they were as consistent as possible with the technology that was available to them at the time. I think what really dogged them out
and wrong again.
Well, that's just, you're asking me. I think those ones that are legendary, the instruments that are legendary, there were more of them that were great than not. And I think you could say that with the Lloyd Lures. There were more of those Lures that were great than not, especially when you compared them to the generations that followed.
Or the ones that before them.
Or the ones before
that,
them.
I guess you can consider that. I mean, even the steel string Martins before that golden age were very inconsistent and not great. And you'd have one or two. So there's an argument there.
We all know that there's when we talk about dreadnoughts and Martin dreadnoughts, there is a 1935 to 38, 39 era that everybody knows roughly what that sound is. Even though there's slight differences there, and there's even some changes in bracing patterns and all that kind of stuff, there's still a consistent tone that everybody kind of knows of those eras of guitars, okay? So that tells me that there was a consistency there. There's also one, I guess, for the 70s too, and it was just
the wrong
bad.
direction.
But that said, we all know what that was. So there was consistency there. I agree. I agree with you 100%, which is what you started this podcast with. Is we are way more consistent now than ever before. It will always be that way. Even in the cheapest guitars, it's just fact that technology has allowed that.
Well, this goes back to another, even the cheapest guitars is not quite a true statement, because that's the reason we don't carry some brands, is they can make some great guitars and then some really bad ones. And that really illustrates the point that we're discussing right now, or one of the points until Jeremy changed it, was the consistency of these guitars. So the hand building element of it and the technology they put into it and the time and effort that certain brands put into their guitars to create consistency and not have 1 out of 10 be good is a huge part of this, because there are certain brands that build to spec, that don't hand carve their tops or tune their tops and carve their braces, any of that stuff. And they're very straight consistency. There's other brands that are doing that by hand, such as Eastman. They do take the time, because they're able to, with their economics, to fine tune their guitars. There's other brands like Yamaha and Breedlove that are doing it straight with technology. So they're looking at tops before they're even cut, and they're looking at their braces before they're even cut, and they're imaging them and they're resonant testing them and doing all this stuff to create a consistency directly with technology and machinery. And then there are some brands that do nothing and just build everything to spec, and you get that inconsistency.
There's even variation there. Like some will just have, all right, here's a pile of this thickness and density of wood. Here's a pile of this thickness. All these ones have this bracing. All these ones have this bracing. All these ones have that. And then there's others that say carve all tops at this thickness. We've got to get all of them out and make sure they're thick enough that those mandolin tops aren't going to collapse. So you're going to probably overbuild them. And so again, then it just comes to the piece of wood on whether you got a good one or a bad one. So they're to say all consistency levels have gone up, I think, is a little bit of an overstatement. We still see that variance in that lower priced instrument. But in large, I think the demand of, and it's probably like Richard was saying, when they have this guild of luthiers, just that hive mind of people saying, you know what, we can do better. And I brought up the beer movement. Same thing happened there. If you think of photography, where, you obviously had some really good early photographers, and then you had Ansel Adams and those guys figuring out, if I go in the dark room and start to do these cool new techniques, it just kind of raised the whole bar for all of them. And other people are like, oh, all of a sudden we could do these things we didn't realize we could do. And that causes that consistency and that professionality and that demand for excellence that I think is what leads to the consistency. Like John said, Gilchrist could say, all right, I've got enough orders, I can do 50 of them. Let's not worry so much about voicing the tops. Let's just get 50 mandolins out. The backlash to that would be detrimental to his reputation. He won't allow that to happen. So he keeps the amount of instruments out just to make sure that the quality level stays that way. So it's that because they set the bar so high, they can't lower it now. Yeah. And they have to be consistent.
I understand that.
So here's a question. Here's a theory. Was it Henry Ford who destroyed guitar building and consistency of instruments?
I think it was lack of competition. I still go back to that. I feel like because Martin is more consistent now. Especially at a certain level, their guitars are much more consistent.
I would 100% agree with that. I think even
so
more
is Taylor,
so than probably you.
Because all these major brands, when they didn't have competition, what reason would they have other than to put out instruments? Gibson is who is a little bit slower in the steel string world to be competitive in this, is way more consistent. They're building these really cool reissue guitars that are consistent. I think it just they had to catch up with the times. They had to realize, oh wait, there's a demand for this. We got to figure out how to do that on our scale.
But there was also to go back to my, was it the fact that they had to get assembly line? Was that what slowed it down in the first place? They believed that at that time, that was the demand. Demand was get guitars in people's hands. This is the whole idea. Like I said, I really truly believe there was more attention on a small scale to every single individual guitar, voicing them. Those techniques are not new. Tap toning, I mean, you listen to Richard talk about violin building. Tap tuning and listening to how these instruments are built was way back in the violin worlds and way past, we're talking centuries ago.
The innovation comes in being consistent over a large amount of them. So.
That's what I'm trying to say. And I think once America went through this boom of assembly line, and man, I can do this, and I get a fairly consistent. Yes, that consistency is a different consistency, but it's consistent. The thicknesses are all consistent. The build shapes are all consistent. Everything.
Yeah, but the argument for that is every piece of wood is different. You can't just build everything.
That was the thing that wasn't known at the time.
So it goes back to what I said earlier. It's taken years of studying to see what happens with these instruments.
I told you in the beginning, you're right and you're wrong.
That was the right part.
You just didn't prove, you didn't tell me where I was right. I needed to be told where I was right. Anyway.
The Acoustic Shoppe Knows People is brought to you by the fine folks at The Acoustic Shoppe.
Some fine people over there.
Have you guys ever heard of a mandolin? If so, you should already be in the car driving to the Acoustic Shoppe. If not, you should be on the World Wide Web searching up theacousticshoppe.com. If the answer is no, then you should go listen to a mandolin, then get back to step 1 and continue through the rest of the steps. As always, please drive safely.
Guys, it's time to review the AI.
Oh, is it that time again?
It is that time again. And this is where we
AI
take a
review.
look at how the internet uses AI to the detriment of humankind. So the top 15 mandolins, according to String Kings, I found some interesting information in this. One of the mandolins, it has a solid maple neck with rosewood fingerboard and conventional snakehead peg head. It's hooked up to the body by a modified dovetail neck joint, not solely providing the genuine look, but additionally has a cushy form that's simple to play and provides a lifetime of serviceability. That's a very important thing to look for in a mandolin. I found another one here. Let's see, I got to look through this great review. The looks of this mandolin are improved by the silver frets, which might be nickel plated. The frets supply wonderful player expertise.
Yeah,
The neck is crafted from rosewood as well, which makes playing the mandolin easy. The mandolin is solidly manufactured that provides a warm and incredible sound. The sound that this mandolin provides takes you back to old times. The metal chrome-plated open gear machine tuners permit elevated playability and simple tuning. The resonance that's produced by this mandolin is wealthy, deep, and brilliant.
Wealthy.
Can we all get together and discuss the tonal properties of a rosewood neck?
Yes, and the playability that it provides. When you have a rosewood neck, the playability is so much easier. And then those nickel-plated silver
Wait a minute.
frets make it pretty.
Rosewood. There's no rosewood necks, is there?
Even if there were, how does that affect the playability of it? Yeah, that would be a nice neck, then.
It would be.
Neck.
It would also weigh like 500 pounds.
Rosewood plies.
So let this be a warning to you folks. Do not trust the internet. A machine wrote it.
Computers don't know how to sell instruments or.
I hate to break it to people on the internet right now. Most of your top 5 internet listings of anything you're buying right now are not actually written by anybody. They are written by a machine.
Machines will get us a little further along, but we still need the human to get it across the finish line. Thank you, editors. Thank you for doing your job properly. And
thank you for your service. Salute.
Thank you, AI, for selling us this wonderful mandolin made of.
Would we give this AI a grade, a passing grade?
No.
I give it a D minus.
D minus. It was a first attempt, and it should have been attempted twice.
I cannot wait to play the rosewood neck mandolin.
I'm more into those nickel-plated steel frets, whatever they were. Why would you plate frets with silver?
I don't know.
That seems like an extra effort that isn't worth it.
All right, guys. This has been Rate, Review the AI.
Review the AI.
The not so
Right.
intelligent.
Rate the AI. Back to our show.
As is absolute truth that the consistency is where I think most over the last 40 years, probably, maybe more, is where every manufacturer of musical instruments, and I'm going to go outside of the string world, where they really started to recognize that it was less of an assembly line style consistency and more of a, now we need to figure out how to do this and make the sound consistent. And I think that was what was the major focus for all these companies.
And I think we could even go a little farther to a move that D'Addario made with their string company. That it's just that maybe humans in general seem to progress and things get better and better with refinement and with knowledge that you had before that. I know D'Addario talked for a long while that they would purchase strings just like all the string manufacturers. They would, that core wire they get from one steel plant, and the steel plant basically they shift on what they're going to do. So they're building I-beams for high-rise construction for this 6-month period, and then they'll put a little window in there. We're going to make core wire for the string manufacturers, and you got the 6-week window that they're going to do that core wire. And then they go back to doing something else. Because they were constantly shifting back and forth between how they were refining the steel, it was very inconsistent. One time they get this really good core wire and it was very consistent throughout the wire, and breakage went down, tune stability went way up, and it was just right on. The next time they got that same core wire from that company, they had something different in the alloy. It would break easily. It didn't have the same. So D'Addario went and said, we're going to make our own core wire. They actually got a smelt, I believe, where they smelt and extrude the steel. And that way they own the consistency behind it. And again, that's just one of these innovations that consistency matters.
You're bringing up a point that I didn't even want to touch on, which would be banjos. The metallurgy that goes into banjos, the inconsistency of the metallurgy, yet the consistency of pre-war granadas of everybody thinking they're the greatest banjos in the world. That's a whole nother world that we don't even want to discuss because banjo.
We'll have to bring in Jens to talk about that. He's very
nutties. They're nutty. Anyway, it just goes back to, I find it interesting that I think it comes from all angles. I think the technology has brought us there. I think the experience and knowledge being passed down one place to another is just grown us to this point and bring us into, wait for it, guys, the golden age of guitar building and the consistency. But I find my point in the beginning, and I'm going to stand on this.
We could have just ended this podcast at the very beginning.
I know, just like Jason.
I'm going to stand on this.
I know what he's about to say, and I'm about to go and just blow it up.
I completely, 100%, I will come out and say specifically that guitars are 100% more consistent, and I don't think necessarily there is a diamond in the rough out there, but I don't think it's anything that can't be overcome with a better setup. Or I think that's the fine details is what we're getting down to.
But see, now I love that you got into this, because this was something that I was watching from your initial statement that I was dying to get into.
Waiting to set this
I'm just
trap.
dying to get into this one. No,
you just walked into this one.
I think you're absolutely right. And
wrong.
Expectations. No, the question is expectations. Consumer expectations have now arisen to the point that there will still be a consumer that will argue your point, which is ordering online. They are so consistent these days that it doesn't really matter. I agree with you. If I was buying a guitar that was 20, 30 years ago and I saw the consistency right now, I would feel like, man, there's hardly any differences. I am watching people on forums that are having an absolute fit over the 100th of an inch difference at the nut right now versus the next one, and I cannot play that guitar.
That brings up a huge point. Okay, so we've been, in my head, I've been specifically talking about consistent in tone.
Yeah.
But consistent in building, that's a whole nother thing.
Well, there we can actually go to. There are companies that are absolutely consistent.
Well, yeah, they use technology.
I argue this one that it can be good and bad. And I know I'm moving off the point that I was about to make, but this is a good
Write it
and
down
a
so you
bad.
can come back to
I
it.
will write. Now you don't have it a pen. But we talk about this. Taylor Guitars and a lot of our guitar companies are using a CNC 100%. Machine to 100% to build their neck shapes. And every single one of them is exactly the same as the last. Mm-hmm. There's not a single one of them that is a difference.
Saddles and everything else, yeah.
Exactly. So that is all well and good if you are that person that loves that neck shape and that deal. And
So that brings the argument. So if
You guys argue too much.
if
This is an
technology,
argument.
just my counterpoint. This is just a debate show these days, anyway. So
I'm right,
I'd like
you're
the
wrong.
floor. That brings him to
The gentleman from Missouri gets 5 minutes.
If technology were the only thing that made more consistent guitars and better guitars these days, then that company that came out a few years ago, Maestro or whatever it was, that was 100% robot built, consistent, which is
they're
CNC.
cool to watch.
Then by proxy, I think is the correct term, they should be the best guitar in the world, right? But they're not.
There's that argument.
So it's not just technology specifically.
It takes the human factor that, and that's again that reputation that these guys raise the bar, and they know that what their customers expecting from them is a consistent
I
quality
figured out
tone.
My argument is the knowledge is a major point of that.
Yeah,
So
it's building on all those different. And that,
what was your original point though that you got sidetracked?
well, I also have the solution for that. I have the solution for that
Don't forget
problem that you have. I got
audience,
the
please don't forget about the expectations. Remind us in a minute. We need to
that in
do
your
that.
pocket and save that for later.
I have the solution. The problem is we can build now more technologically consistent instruments. We need more technologically consistent humans.
No, sir. We need that human variability to make it take.
No,
keep
but I'm
pushing
talking
it
about the
better.
buyer.
Can AI
the
build a
problem
guitar?
is if everybody had the same exact hand and liked the same feel, then the neck would be absolutely there, and the body sizes
Same
of all of us
ears.
and the same ears and the same thing that we hear. There's our problem.
I'm
Your ears are
gonna
wrong shape.
reach in my pocket and pull out this expectations note that I have.
Do it, please.
Wait
do
a
it.
minute. I want to talk about something else.
Please, sir, don't. The gentleman yields. Please yield your time.
I'm gonna filibuster you right now. I'm gonna
Filibust you right in the
I'm gonna
head.
recite the Gettysburg Address.
That's a very short document.
Four
so that won't
score
take
and
very
7
long.
years ago,
One of the shortest speeches.
our
only
forefathers
2 minutes long.
set forth on this planet.
The fellow before him
better
gave
union.
a 4-hour speech, and we don't even remember his name.
And Harry Potter went to
2-minute.
Hogwarts.
All right. So expectations, and this is going off
Hermione.
the subject by a little bit, but I wish there was a way to let our customers know that I'm very disappointed in them, to some degree, some of them, and that is, and it's because maybe it's because the bar has been raised so much by other things, but. Okay, we talk about how great an option and price point Eastman is. For the dollar amount, you get a great instrument. Then there's also this boutique build that costs about 5 times as much as that. And you'll get people online saying, why would I ever pay 5 times as much for that? But then they'll buy that $1,200 Eastman, they get it and say, I see a small scratch in the finish when they buffed it.
Or
Or I
this
see,
nut width is just 1/32nd, 1/64,000th of a hair.
I was tuning
wider.
I was turning my tuner backwards and forwards for about 3 hours yesterday, and I noticed that one of the teeth was slightly ajar, and it made a little binding. And you say, this is the difference between the $1,200 guitar and the $8,000 guitar is the time and perfection. So you can put into that $8,000 guitar. They cannot release a guitar that has any buffing scratches because they are charging you $8,000. It is going to be premium. They have spent more hours, more time on that guitar. You expect it, and they will deliver it. This guitar, they're getting you a very good quality instrument with a lifetime warranty. Well built, really good tone, good playability, but the perfection is not going to be there. Don't expect this guitar to look and feel like this $8,000 guitar.
You brought that up, and that reminds me of a point I was trying to make a little bit ago
you
about
forgot about that.
expectations. And I forgot.
Good thing you remember.
I'm glad
I
you
put
were
that in
able
my
to get
pocket.
that in there. But that is absolutely the truth. The expectations of the customers. Your point that you were originally saying was we shouldn't worry about ordering something online because the consistency is pretty much there. I think the problem with that now is everybody now expects even more than they would have expected 20 years ago.
But are you guys specifically talking about build quality or tone?
I'm talking about all of the above. Little tiny things. I think even in tone, I watch some of these people that will listen to something that and again, that's fair for them to do. You're welcome to do that as a guitar player or a mandolin player. These little things that they think that they have to have. I think that's a fair thing. But if you were coming in there and going, I just want a really great sounding guitar that I know is going to stack up against anything out there, I agree with you. It is absolutely to the point now with most of these manufacturers, especially upper mid-range and on up, where you can expect this from the sound. And the voicings, we talked about this a bunch of times, as voicings are different. A Bourgeois at boutique level, a Bourgeois sounds different than a Boucher and a Atkin, and they are deliberately going after a certain focus of tone. They're all going to be within that realm, and I think you're going to have a very consistent run. But again, there's certain players always that are going to go, yeah, but I can't buy that unless I touch it and feel it and make that. That
brings
me
my
own.
Next thing I'm thinking in my brain. Can you guys hear it?
You
guys hear it?
I feel it.
My thinking string.
I can feel it.
I have a thinking string.
I smell something burning.
No, so you're talking consistency within reason.
Yes.
So we have the level of our mass-produced guitars, but then you go into. I want to use Preston Thompson guitars as an example. We have, and there's other there's thousands of these guys that are building very small numbers, and people ordering them sight unseen for $10,000 to $20,000 in some cases. On the assumption, and I guess expectation that they will be consistently good in tone, and not only just the quality, because yes, they're going to be consistent in the quality. I mean, obviously, they're not going to do anything to that guitar at that price point and put it out if it isn't to that exact level of quality.
Sure.
But the tone, I see these guys. How do you justify that if this person can't buy, a mass-produced guitar that they can assume is consistent? Are people like Preston Thompson guitars building that much more of a consistent guitar that
There's a
people are
reason
willing?
they're the cream of the crop. There's a reason that they have the waiting list.
So you
they've
agree?
They've built the reputation of knowing and having the secret sauce. They have the Bourgeois ear when he's tap toning guitars, or the build quality and tone that they're getting out of Preston Thompson or Gallagher guitars. They all have their own kind of reputation that they have built, and people trust that reputation because they are consistently putting that out there. So yeah, I think
So it's the individual hands put on those guitars that
built that brand. Yeah. And they're using this is their take on it. And John talked about, that there's going to be a Bourgeois sound and a Boucher sound and a Ferk sound, and they all are going for something slightly different. Santa Cruz, the tone they're looking for. And you know how much I like Scotch, guys. There's the PD Islay Scotches. Islays. The Islands Scotches. And the Highland Scotches.
Highland.
You're going to have those top brands that are consistently putting out stuff, but the peatiness of an Islay Scotch.
It's like Isla Fisher.
Macallan being much more smoky and rich, and they are both premium drinks, not going for the same flavor at all. I mean, it couldn't be farther from each other, but they still have that reputation that they're going to be the top level. Same thing with a Boucher and a Bourgeois. The different tone they're going for in those instruments, but they're going to be premium and top level guitars. And once they figure out how to make a blend, a guitar blend,
They are. Yeah,
Boucher.
it's already happened. It's a Martin versus a blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's what we're doing. Vintage guitars versus that. We're making blends now. Modern sounds. Collings guitars has a blended sound of this and this that I find to be interesting, or whatever the brand is. Like I said, this goes back to what are your expectations? And, yes, I think the consistency is absolutely there. What are your expectations in these brands? And you're asking why, in my opinion, this is, again, what I think when I hear, why is it that somebody's so confident when they buy a guitar that they will custom order it 2 years out on a certain brand? Why? Because they know even if it's not exactly what they think it's going to sound like, it's still going to be absolutely fabulous and have some characteristics that no other guitar has. I'm sorry, but there are tiny variances that will never be absolutely tamed to the point that you can get it 100% there. There's too many organic differences in there. Variables. That's the word I was looking for, that are in there. There's always we're going to narrow and narrow. We've done it. You're seeing it. It's narrowed so far that it's always going to be there. But now the expectations have to be attained by the humans that are going to buy this. And I'm sorry to tell you this. I haven't played them, but even on these super boutique guitars, I've had some people that come in and said, man, I played this one. It was just absolute garbage. And it cracks me up because I'll play that same guitar and I'll go, man, that could have been the greatest guitar that I ever heard in my entire life. Again, this variable now comes down to who are you and what organic differences that were having to be done in that guitar build. There's always going to be some of that.
So on a broad scale, the level of consistency has gone up tremendously, but there's still levels of expectation within that consistency that we're trying to see in this.
I think we've come to a conclusion.
So
It's
all
nothing.
guitars are better. All guitars are better than they were in the 60s and 70s and 80s, right?
Boy, you're going to get a lot of grief on
I'm
that
sorry.
one.
I'm sorry, people. I'm just going to say it.
As far as
Just gonna say
consistency,
it.
absolutely. I would agree with you.
There were some good guitars back then, but the quality of guitars have gone up. Even in the build quality of guitars has gone up. I mean, there's cleaner, better, precise guitars, hand built or machine built. Either way, they're still better.
Can you think of anything in our human history? And again, we may get some recommendations on things I should look up, but that doesn't just continually progress. I mean, look at the football teams of the heyday. You know, the first
Cars were done. They quit.
Everything is
in the
at such
60s
a
and
higher
we're done.
level than it used to be. You watch some of those early basketball teams when they're playing basketball versus now. The level has to keep going up constantly. The races, people are running faster than they ever have before. Once you set a bar, it's human nature to try to exceed that bar. I mean, you guys in the videos, if you go to any really good YouTube channel, go to their first video and then see what they're producing 10 years later. Because of experience, because the bar keeps getting raised, the quality keeps going up. And I think instruments is just one of
Portillo's
those.
hot dogs and Italian beefs have not gotten better. There's nothing you can.
It's already perfect.
You cannot prove on that.
But did they improve upon the hot dog of yesteryear?
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying you wanted an example of something that hasn't gotten better with
Things
age.
peak out.
I mean, that's it.
Okay, maybe in some instances things get to the perfection level and can't get improved.
There are
upon.
certain things you will never.
I got a
improve upon.
question for you.
There's never going to be.
I know this is you were wrapping up, but I think this is
22nd
important for me. Why is it that, again, you just said the 60s, late
a hot
60s
dog
and 70s?
question?
No, it's not. We went back to guitars. I'm
good
going
job.
to bring this back. No matter what you guys do, I'm bringing it back to
Open
guitars.
up Portillo's and
Did you forget something?
No.
Did you write it down?
I got it. All right, here it is. Why is it that we all grew up knowing that this era that we talk about, this 70s era instruments were not great, and yet there's all these younger people who now play those instruments and go, oh my gosh, that is the greatest vintage sound
Because
that I've
I'm
ever
going to
heard.
stand on this one too. Millennials are dumb. I'm sorry. They're just dumb.
Sorry, guys.
I'm just, you just
podcast.
Oh
you
my
guys like
God.
stupid things and you say stupid things and
If it
you
weren't
just
for the millennial, would we have
Grandpa over here.
podcasts?
yeah, exactly. I know you're the biggest portion of our audience right now, but you guys just don't know your whole from the.
I think
know what?
there's this retro thing. I mean,
It's awful.
Yeah,
it is a coolness factor of the old things,
being
or maybe
old
their
enough, and it's
dad
what they
owned
can
one,
afford.
and
it's the vintage that they can afford, I believe.
Well,
that.
there's we all went through that. I guess that's true.
And I don't know that it's that prevalent. I think there's some people
Oh,
like
is
to
there?
rip the old-
There's a lot of hipsters that want to play only 70s and 80s Gibson, whatever,
Yeah.
such and such.
It happens. It happens a lot.
There's
There-
people
he comes
online
from the
right now
market.
talking about the D35 from 1960 to 65 or whatever it is. That is like
68 came out.
68, whatever it is.
But,
That is like the pinnacle of Martin guitars for them, and it's like
well, again,
that's exactly what I said.
but
to them online.
this is my
How do you
point for
spell
this.
that out?
This is my point.
Which emoji is that?
You officially hit my point, which is we
sorry, I
don't
didn't
have
mean to.
consistent humans because you say that, and I think there is a sound that does exist. And I'm telling you, even there,
That's true.
there's even stuff that I've gone back and listened to some 80s recordings of bands that had some of the crummiest effects, keyboards and stuff like that.
gated drums.
And
that's
I
just
listen
the
back
most
to that,
awful
and there's
sound
part of
in the
me
world.
that goes, "Man, cool nostalgic
Yeah.
tone, man. That is just the coolest."
That's true.
And then when you compare it to something that's
Play it
out
through
there,
a
you
phone.
realize it sounds like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, that was awful." So
You do have these terrible technique guys that can't sing with any technique, yet you love them the same.
There's some soul there.
Yeah.
I still
I
can't
agree.
drink Pabst Blue Ribbon though. I don't know why they're doing that.
Back to Jeremy's drinking problem.
I just
anyway.
like the finer things. And
By the way, that must be where the mustache came in.
Jeremy's going through his hipster phase.
I'm gonna start drinking
drinking
PBR.
Pabst.
I want to drink PBR.
We're in
I want to do this.
Tight rolled jeans to work. God. All right, next podcast, hipsters.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy officially hit his midlife crisis.
Yeah, but he went
I want to
weird.
come back and
He
get
went
be
weird.
a
Normally you
hipster.
just buy a Corvette or something, but he went back to being a hipster.
And I want to be a
Weirdo.
hipster.
Anyway.
kids think I'm cool.
Yeah, they do. Anyway, so to wrap this up, put a fine tooth
I
bow.
wish you would do
a
that,
fine
please.
tooth bow on it.
No, you're so messed up with your analogies.
We are in the golden age of guitar building or instrument building. We're not even going to say guitar building, instrument building.
I think so.
There isn't an instrument out there that hasn't benefited from experience, technology, and
Consumer demand.
our forefathers setting forth to build a better guitar.
Oh, here we go in the Gettysburg Address again.
If I really wanted to filibuster like they do these days, I'd just go la 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 la. But anyway, and more consistent, correct?
There's 100% your initial argument, and that's why I said you're
I
right
love that
and
we're
you're
going back
wrong.
to his initial argument.
His
We could've
initial
ended this
argument
podcast.
is
Why do you
minutes
guys
ago.
even listen to the end of this?
I don't know, but he is right. It is so consistent right now that it is hard to kind of come up with major issues that you will see arise in instrument building. I don't think that world exists anymore. I just now say the variables are based on you as a human and what you think the tolerances of those should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I'm
the
going to
biggest.
throw in with this consistency thing. We've talked about this little slight pet peeve of ours, and we definitely will go through every instrument that comes to our shop and inspect it when it first ggets here.
Set your
Before we ship it out, we go through the. No, I'm going to a different point. We'll inspect it before it goes out. We do not do a 98-point setup on every single instrument, and neither do the other guys. Consistency, if we're buying an instrument that is, and maybe they're buying some of these that they shouldn't be buying, but if you're buying from one of these reputable brands, the setup is 99% consistent. Like every guitar we get in from just about every manufacturer we get are set up very well. We don't go back through and take the guitar apart. And the people we are buying this guitar from are the experts. We are the salespeople. Why are we taking a guitar from the person that builds it and saying, you guys didn't do a good job. Let our store fix what you did. And then we'll send that to the customer.
On our next episode,
In our next podcast, sales and marketing techniques using the term fully set up before shipping to you. No, yeah, I agree with you, Jeremy.
We'll do a
And
neck
it's all
adjustment 'cause those go out
It
and-
goes back to within reason.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain spec that we won't allow to pass through when we receive it and when we ship it. There's a certain spec to a $10,000 guitar that isn't the same as a $2,000 guitar. So, within reason, yes, everything is consistent. You need to have expectations, but by and large, I don't think even in a brand like Eastman, we see that large of a variance in their instruments these days.
Nope.
To where any of them are unsellable, or we think, well, this one's just not nearly as good as this one. I don't remember a time where we've received a bunch of Eastmans where we said, oh man, that one's way better, or that one's way worse than all the rest of them. They're all very extremely consistent within that price point expectation.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Agreed.
All right. That was fun.
Well, guys,
Was it?
John, thank you for dressing
tired.
up for today's podcast.
I'll do it again next week.
He didn't get the memo, but
You're probably going to have to
We
put
got
our
it in
shirt
anyway.
out for copyright.
probably.
Well, you
No, I don't think you have to worry about that. It's, yeah, he just kind of,
With
belly's
his belly here
holding
and
it up
wrinkles
for
and
you.
stuff.
I don't know how that X-Wing flies with all those lumps. Anyway, this was fun, guys. We're going to have
I
another
don't know why
podcast
you're
next
teasing.
week.
You have the same exact shirt, and I guarantee it's got
He's
more
wearing
lumps.
it under that one.
Yeah. Anyway,
Guys,
I don't have lumps.
I can't wait to see you guys again tomorrow.
have
Not doing a
humps.
podcast.
My lovely
Your
lady.
lumps. Do all the boys come to your yard?
Yeah. Do you like milkshakes? We'll see you guys next week. Are you guys going to be here next week?
I'm not coming.
It's not on the calendar. I'm not going to be here.
All right, fine. All right. Well, this is the last podcast.
Hope you
Sorry,
guys have
guys.
enjoyed the Acoustic Shop Knows People. The Acoustic Shop New People.
We know things today, and I don't know what we know. I don't think we know anything really.
Well, listen back to this
insulted.
podcast and that will be confirmed.
All right. Well, I'm
See you
out of
guys
here. I'm
later.
hungry.
Yep.
Bye.
Portillo's anyway?
Take me
The Acoustic Shoppe Knows People. Handmade by Trent Pruitt, Hinkley Hinkleston, and Jason Chapman for the Acoustic Shoppe.
Theme song written and performed by Ofer Koren.
And please remember to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.